Hello and welcome back to the Wellbeing Desk where we discuss staff wellbeing and what we can do for the workplace essentially. This is now going to be talking a little bit more around the research, the stats and things to back up some of the research that we found from an employee's perspective. So welcome to part 2. So let's try and underpin what the problems actually are. What are the factors contributing to work pressure? Workload is definitely one of them, especially in teaching. It's in the research, it's probably one of the top. Workload is an issue, there's things around it, but essentially that coping mechanism and really understanding, well, if I have an extreme level of workload, do I communicate that? Or do I suffer in silence because I don't want my manager to think that I'm not adequate enough to get that work done? That happens a lot. No, talk to your manager and tell them that you've got too much fucking work. Presenteeism, turning up for work with physical or mental problems. Presenteeism is probably one of the worst things that you can do. We have a problem with absenteeism, yes, we'll probably talk about that later, but presenteeism is an issue which could then lead to absenteeism. If you are turning up to work and you are sick, don't. Stop. Our jobs are there, yes. If you are changing lives and you feel that if you don't turn up to work, people are going to die, there's probably an issue within your workplace that actually someone else could potentially take over and do. But you are ultimately going to have a massive detrimental effect on that workplace if you turn up. So just don't do it. From an employer perspective and other people, we need to be mental health first aid trained so that we can understand those people that are showing up to work when they shouldn't. We should be telling them to go home. I've worked in places where I have turned up and, I'm bunged up, I've got a cold, I've got a shooting headache, and I've been told to go home. Good, well done. Shame on me though. You need to communicate and make sure that you know yourself so that you can recover faster and be back in work, essentially. So that's presenteeism, let's be aware of it. Work-life balance. Now this has become a hot topic. Work-life balance has now, unfortunately, become one of those things that I want to prioritise my work-life balance, but that doesn't mean you can't work. Work is still important. It's work-life balance. That also means 50% of your life, your time, is also going to work, depending on your work hours, obviously. I don't mean 50% quite literally. But it also means try hard in work as well. It doesn't mean that you don't have to work anymore. Employers often say to me that people don't want to work. They're not working hard enough. I don't want them working for me, but I don't have any other staff. So there's a little bit of an issue there, but that's been reflective on you as a company, the culture, your competencies, the type of person you recruit. But from an individual point of view, be self-aware of that. You are getting paid to do a job, do the job, but also be mindful of what you need for that work-life balance. Don't be showing up to work, out of hours because you're not going to be productive the next day. Really prioritise that. You have your work hours for a reason. If your workload is too much, tell your manager, communicate them. Now, feeling undervalued, and this becomes one of those things where it's an external factor and therefore it can be out of our control. For example, if society doesn't value a job, let's say personal training, it's not as valued as it could be because the salary isn't great. It's never been prioritised. The NHS probably spend 2 to 3% of their budget on the prevention. Personal trainers are literally supporting people and can with really, really good roles. They're highly qualified, questionable sometimes with training providers, but depending on where they get the calls from, they are qualified and they are serving a massive purpose within society to really combat some of the health and well-being that is a massive issue at the moment, and mental health. So around personal training, why is it not as valued as, say, a physiotherapist or a teacher or the more professional role? Personal training should be a professional role, but it's just not valued by the government because it's not reflective in salaries, it's not recognised. Everyone always sees it as a bit of a side hustle, and therefore it's not a role that is valued, so therefore you're not going to feel good in that role. You're not going to feel like you're being recognised or valued for the hard work that you do. Similarly with teaching, it can feel the same because in terms of the workload and how much work is being done, it again just isn't valued for how much work we actually do. Same with nurses, the police, public sector, to be honest, it's an issue. How can we help that? Influence is massive. So staff having a lack of influence over policies also contributing to work pressure. An employer, let's say, that hasn't been working operationally or on the ground for over, well, a year or a year plus, isn't really going to understand what the needs are of that individual. Therefore, if your staff aren't involved in some of the policy making, it's not going to be reflective. They're not going to feel like it even supports them in the slightest. So we have to make sure that people are involved in the big decisions and over policy. And then we have the other external factors of things like Brexit, COVID, when we had that, the government, just everything that's going on in the world. It's hard. Living costs. It's a struggle. People need money. And so their purpose, sense of purpose, let's say personal training, sport and physical activity, the salaries aren't there, unfortunately, but people have got their mortgages to pay. Are they going to go and get a job elsewhere? Some are, because they cannot afford to keep living in this world. So they have to sacrifice. They'll sacrifice their purpose, their meaning, when we go back to that hegemonic well-being. It's really important to be reflective of that and really understand that some of your employees might have had to make a sacrifice, which is detriment to their well-being again. And that's a choice that comes from external factors. That's something that the government is bigger. It's bigger than your organisation. So don't be too disheartened when things like that are a problem. Just make sure you've got staff surveys to back that up. Is it actually an external factor out of your control? Or is it something that is well within your control and you can support that individual to make sure they've got a personal growth plan, for example? Okay, so this slide is very much around the reasons why we need to be doing more with wellbeing interventions within our companies. So as you can see, 65% of engaged employees are more likely to perform better in the workplace if their wellbeing was prioritised. So 65%, okay? 77% of employees would still choose teaching again, for example, if their well-being was met. And again, this was the same percentages, 80% of people within the UK legal government, if they had wellbeing interventions and if their wellbeing, individual wellbeing needs were also met. Quite similarly in the public sector, if again wellbeing interventions, they were more likely to stay within that workplace. 98% of employers also agree that workplace health and wellbeing strategies are important to an employee's quality of life. So we are all in agreement that wellbeing interventions do matter. 54% of employee wellbeing needs would look for other jobs if workplaces did not support wellbeing. Now, the vital thing now is that younger professionals, there's a higher demand for their wellbeing to be prioritised. They will look for other jobs if you are not supporting their wellbeing, especially because the majority of people and the reasons why people are out of work at the moment is because of their mental health. So the 74% of the younger professionals that are looking for other places and making sure that before they even apply for a role that there are wellbeing interventions. If they then join that workplace and their well-being isn't prioritised, even if you've got policies in place, if they are not living and breathing the well-being culture, they will leave or look for other places. Now, employers do believe this. We have 98% and 59% that actually they believe that they do encourage health and well-being. Now, there is an argument to say that individuals must look after their own well-being, but also it is up to our workplaces to make sure that individuals feel comfortable to relay what it is that they actually need. They have to trust their organisation to be vulnerable in the first place, and so we have to look for the signs. We have to make sure the culture is there, and unfortunately, the culture isn't always there in our workplaces. But how do we do that? We will talk about how you do that in part 3, but I did promise you some research and statistics. So some of this research is very much related to the educational teaching profession, but I do think that we can use this data from a workplace point of view and really adapt it to all workplaces because it does matter. But 60% of educational professionals would not disclose mental health problems to their employer. Unfortunately, this is the case. So 76% of employees, general members of the population, also agreed that they wouldn't disclose if they had a mental health. Why is that again? Is it that managers don't have the skills to deal with employees that do have complex mental health problems? Or perhaps the culture just isn't there. People don't feel that they can actually talk about their mental health. Do we still have stigma? That's quite a high percentage, especially in the educational environment as well. We know that 35 billion is spent on mental health, especially when we've having to bring in cover and different recruitment because people are off sick due to their mental health. MSK is also another reason why people are out of work. We need to be doing better as workplaces to really support health and well-being, physical health, mental health, social well-being. 21.2 billion is what it costs employees being present in the workplace, but they're not performing to their full capacity because of that reduced productivity due to ill health. And usually it's mental health that is causing this issue. There's 50% of teachers that leave within the first 5 years, or 20% in the first 3 years. I'm actually in the 5-year category, unfortunately. But that again is related to mental health, lack of flexibility, the workload. It all then links back. And so it's really important that we're listening to what it is that our employees need to thrive within that workplace and feel comfortable so that they are not off sick. And so the final table here is very much around the willingness by employees if there are wellbeing interventions within that workplace. And as you can see, I'm hoping you can see a lot better than what I can. As you can see that if global wellbeing within that workplace was in place, you would have a higher proportion of your employees that are more willing, it does say sacrifice, but more willing to actually be productive within their work environment. And as you can see, the 3 bottom ones is very much around if there is reduced well-being prioritised within the workplace, they are less likely to be willing to perform for you. So it's a no-brainer really. If you prioritise your staff, your people, they will prioritise your organisational goals. Thanks for joining part 2. This was very much around the research and a couple of stats to back up the fact that wellbeing interventions are super important within your workplace. And so just make sure that you are prioritising your people so that they stay and that they are not off sick because of their mental health. There's so much more that we can do within the workplace. So please be mindful, use this as an awareness piece. And part 3 is all around the next phase of what it is that we can actually do within the workplace to actually start implementing some evidence-based research around what is wellbeing interventions.